All right, so I'm going to go through the questions in this review. Remember, I'm not going to go through all of them. I'm only going to go through like pretty much one of each topic because if you guys need help on the other ones, you can either reach out and remind, or you can follow what I did for this particular problem and apply it to the other one. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is this first one here. So let me just insert this number line. All right, and then when we go to plot, I'm going to do number 3. So we're seeing that they're counting in fourths. So I can count 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4, or 1, -1/4, -2/4, -3/4, and -1. So I can just go ahead and count by fourths to make this 2/4 is 1/2 to make this easy for me to plot. And in this way, it's easy for me to plot this number and its opposite. All right, you guys could do this a few different ways. It doesn't have to be done just this one way here. You could have drew this number line, and then in between the 0 and 1, you could have just put 3 tick marks, and it's understood that they're being counted by 1/4 at that point, but it's up to you. All right, the opposite of 3/4 is -3/4. So then we need to plot these 2 points. So we would plot them at -3/4 and +3/4. All right, find the opposites of the numbers. Remember, the opposite is saying the number that's the same distance from 0, but on the other side of 0. So I'll go through number 6 and number 7. So the opposite of 15 is -15 because 15 is 15 units away from 0, and the number that's 15 units away from 0 on the other side of 0 is -15. And then the opposite of -25 is +25 because -25 is 25 units away from 0 on the negative side. Then when we go to the other side of 0, 25 is also 25 units away. All right, I'm going to do this number 9. So it says find the opposite of the opposite of the opposite. And first we need to write an expression. Remember, opposite, we can just represent it by the negative sign. So it's the negative of the negative of the negative, and then our number is -10. So this is what our expression will look like. And then remember, every time that we have 2 negatives, they will then cancel out to give us a positive. So those 2 will give us a positive, and those 2 will give us a positive. So that means our final answer is just +10. Or remember, 2 opposites are going to end up canceling each other out and give us our original number. So there's 2 opposites there. And now we're just essentially taking the opposite of -10. And then the opposite of -10 is +10. All right, so for this one, I will do this number 16. So remember, minus and negative turns to plus. So we see that we have 2 different signs. We have a positive and we have a negative. So that means we're going to subtract. We take the larger number and we subtract a smaller number, 5.16. And remember, when you're subtracting decimals, you must line them up in the correct spot. So our tenths are on top of our tenths, our hundredths on top of our hundredths, and so on. So then we will borrow from here. So 12 minus 6 is 6. 6 minus 1 is 5. And 8 minus 5 is 3. But remember, our larger number was negative, so it's actually the absolute value of -3.56. And then this is equal to +3.56. All right, the one I'm going to do here is for this one, number 19. So when I look at this, in order for me to list them in order, I need to first find all my common denominators, and all of these are divisible by 20. So I'm going to write them out here off to the side so that this way it's easy for me to list them in order. All right, so 20 goes into 21 times, so I actually don't have to change this number. Actually, let me not cross it out. 5 goes into 24 times. 4 times 4 is 16. 0 we don't have to worry about. 4 goes into 25 times. 5 times 3 is 15. 2 goes into 20 10 times. 10 times 1 is 10. All right, so we know 0 is our smallest number, so we'll start with 0. And then we look, well, 10 over 20 is our next smallest number, and that was 1/2, so I can then write 1/2. Our next one is then going to be 13 over 20, which was 13 over 20. Our next one is 15 over 20, which was 3 over 4. And then our last one was 16 over 20, which was 4 over 5. All right, so I'm just going to first list, this is quadrant 1. Then we count counterclockwise. So this is quadrant 2, this is quadrant 3, and this is quadrant 4. All right, I'm just going to do point A, and then I'll also do point C after. All right, so point A, we have this point here. Remember, we're looking for its x and its y value. We graph our points as x, y. Well, this is our x-axis and this is our y-axis. So it is 1 unit in a positive direction for our x. So A is then going to be, we should write it like this, A is then going to be 1 for x, and it's 1, 2, 3, 4 for y. So it's 1, 4. This point is in this quadrant over here, so it is in quadrant 1. Right? For point C, it's not moving anywhere right or left, so our x value is 0, and then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 for our y value. Now this one's not in any quadrant because it's on our axis, so you can say no quadrant, or depending on how the question is written, you might also need to say y-axis. All right, this one says graph the following points. I'm just going to graph point H, because remember, this is our x-axis, and this is our y-axis. When it says, when we have our ordered pairs, it is written as x, y, so this is telling me how I'm moving along my x. We start at our origin, and we're moving -4, so that means we're moving 4 to the left. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4. So that means this point is somewhere along this line, right? You do not have to draw this dotted line. I'm just showing you that first we move, and now we know that this x value is somewhere along this dotted line. And then we look, and our next value is our y, so it's telling me how I'm moving from my y-axis. So I'm moving 8 down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So that means here is going to be my point at -4, -8. All right, and on all of these, we also went through a video that goes through all these individual things individually. So if you need help with some of these others, we rewatched the video that we did. All right, this one says plot the given point and then reflect it across the x-axis. So our point is 2, 4, so 1, 2, and then it's going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4. So here is our point at 2, 4. All right, this is our x-axis, this is our y-axis. When we reflect it across the x-axis, that means we need to move on the other side of the x-axis. If I try to plot it here, this is not correct because it's never went across our x-axis. It only went across our y. If I try to plot it here, this is also not correct because it's also reflecting across our y-axis, not just the x. And all it's telling us to reflect it is the x-axis. So when we reflect this, we count. We are 1, 2, 3, 4 units away from our x-axis. So in the other direction, we need to also go 1, 2, 3, 4 units away across the x-axis. So our green one is our correct one because it's only being reflected across the x-axis. This one's being reflected across the y, and this one's being reflected across both the x and the y. All right, this one says reflected across the y-axis, so we will then plot the point, -6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. So right here is our point. This is our x, this is our y. Once again, it says reflected across the y-axis now, not the x and the y. So it won't be over here because this is being reflected. I'm sorry. It won't be over here because this is being reflected across the x-axis. It won't be here because this is being reflected across to both the x and the y-axis. So our only point will be going across the other side of our y. So it'll then be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm sorry, I messed this one up. It's -6, 4, so it should have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then up 4 here. So this is reflecting across the x, which we wouldn't want to do. This is reflecting across both. So the only one that's right will be over here at 6, 4. All right. Find the distance between the given points. So remember, first we need to see, do one of our values have the same x or y have the same value? And yes, y does here. Y does here. So that means that we can label our x value as our a and our b. So it becomes the absolute value of a minus b. So it's the absolute value of -41 minus -17. Well, we know that this minus negative turns to plus. When we have different signs, we can subtract, so 41 minus 17. So then we can borrow from the 4, 11 minus 7 is 4. 3 minus 1 is 2. So it becomes an absolute value of negative 24 since 41 was greater. And the absolute value of negative 24 is positive 24. All right, I'm going to go through question number 40. All right, actually, this is going to be the last question I could go through. As you see, this is not erasing, so it's the last one I'm going to be able to go through. So I'm going to go through this problem here, number 41. So when we multiply 32.156 times 2.8, we don't need to worry about multiplying or putting our tenths and hundredths on top of each other. We just write them and just put all of our numbers all the way to the right like this. Then we multiply like we normally do. 8 times 6 gives me 48. 8 times 5 plus 4 gives me 44. 8 times 1 plus 2 gives me 12. 8 times 2 plus 1 gives me 17. And 3 times 8 plus 1 gives me 25. All right, then I'll move on to the next digit, my 2. I can put the 0. 2 times 6 gives me 12. Let me cross all these out now. 2 times 5 plus 1 gives me 11. 2 times 1 plus 1 gives me 3. 2 times 2 gives me 4. 2 times 3 gives me 6. Now I can add down. This will give me 8, 6, 3, 10, 10, and 9. Or I'm sorry, and 10. This doesn't seem right. All right, this was supposed to be a 9. So I'll write it down here. It's 900368. And then we have a total of 4 decimal places. So we need to move 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal places. So it's 90.0368. All right, I don't have any space to go over any of these other ones. So if you need help with these, please reach out and I can go through it on Remind with you. All right, so that's it for this video.